Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on X at Movies TV Mad and on Instagram and on Threads at Movies TV Mad X. A very warm welcome to Monday's edition of the Movies TV Mad Daily. Before we get into our little conversations, because I want to call a spade today, so please stay tuned. There's some issues with James Gunn's DC I want to talk about. But first of all, let's give you a couple of updates because James Gunn has hinted that there will be updates for Lanterns and Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow very soon. As soon as he unleashes these updates, we will discuss what's going on with Lanterns and Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. As soon as that happens, we will be talking about it here at Movies TV Mad. He has actually, in fact, posted this, which is a Green Lantern picture. I don't know if it's artwork from the Lantern show or if it's from a comic book. If you've seen this in a comic book, please let me know. Anyway, that is enough of that. Now, as you know, earlier this week, any of you loyal, faithful viewers, I was discussing Nathan Filon earlier this week saying that he was offered the Guy Gardner role at the premiere party for James Gunn's The Suicide Squad movie. Well, something very suspicious happened yesterday. All of a sudden, James Gunn on Threads corrected Nathan Filon. He said this: "Don't you mean Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, not The Suicide Squad?" So James Gunn is claiming that Nathan Filon wasn't offered the Guy Gardner role at the Suicide Squad premiere party, but at the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 premiere party. But what is the difference? The difference is that Guardians 3, obviously, once it was shot, was well after the Suicide Squad premiere party. Why is he so desperate for all of you, all of us, to know that? Because it's, as I explained, it's very, very suspect and suspicious if he was offered that role of Guy Gardner, Nathan Filon, during the premiere party of the Suicide Squad. Officially, there was no DC Studios. James Gunn was just someone who had made a film for DC. As I say, no DC Studios. He wasn't officially the co-CEO of DC Studios. And fans are making some accusations. The same accusations that I made on my video earlier this week. That this is dodgy, that you were in place before you said you were in place. He said, I never originally wanted to run DC until, Peter Safran agreed to work with me and run it with me. So, do I believe James Gunn? No, I'm sorry. Rate him as a director, love his comic book movies and Peacemaker, but I don't believe what he's saying here. Because let's say Nathan Filon made a mistake. Why do you have to publicly correct him? Why does it matter? If there's nothing to hide, if it's not a big deal, roll with the punches. Don't say anything. Why is he correcting him? Because he knows it's hugely problematic if he did offer Nathan Filon the Guy Gardner role during the Suicide Squad premiere party and not the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 premiere party. That's why he's making a fuss out of it. Let me tell you something. When people over-elaborate and talk too much and explain a situation too much, I get very, very suspicious. So I do believe that the Guy Gardner role was offered to Nathan Filon during the Suicide Squad premiere party and not the Guardians of the Galaxy premiere party. I don't believe that. I don't believe that, but that's what James Gunn is saying. I don't accept that. And it's all very, very suspicious. It's all very, very murky. And it's all very, very muddy. We know that the people who decided to remove Zack Snyder and bring in Joss Whedon are the people who brought in James Gunn. We know that Toby Emmerich is still there at WB, hiding in plain sight. All those people are there. And I've explained as well that James Gunn and Peter Safran running DC is really no different to Joss Whedon coming in and all the other dodgy decisions they were making during the DCEU. And DC Studios and DC Universe is the DCEU 1.0. It is, because it's not even a full reboot. They used, the Flash movie. They used Flashpoint as a back door to do DC Universe. So it's a kind of a rebooted DCEU, but he's going to use some DCEU elements like the Peacemaker actors and his Suicide Squad universe. He's not recasting everyone. Viola Davis is still going to play Amanda Waller, etc., etc., etc. So I do believe that the gig of Guy Gardner was offered to Nathan Fillion at the Suicide Squad premiere party and not the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 party. Now, maybe James Gunn's telling the truth. Maybe I'm way off base here, but I don't think that I am. And because he's over-elaborating, because he's publicly corrected Nathan here. And also what it shows is the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. You would have thought that Nathan Fillion would be smart enough to keep his mouth shut. But I think that Nathan has made an innocent thing. He said an innocent thing. I don't think that Nathan has made a mistake. I don't think Nathan, is the absent-minded professor. I think he was offered the gig during the Suicide Squad premiere party and not the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 party. That's my opinion. Comments down below. Let me know what you think. Smash a like on the video as well if you want. No one's forcing you to do that. Dodgy, dodgy, dodgy. It really doesn't matter anymore. But we know nefarious things were going on. Because if he did offer Nathan Fillion the Guy Gardner role, during the Suicide Squad premiere party and not the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 premiere party, look, he was already developing this Superman movie. He was told he had to do a Superman movie before he would get his choice of movies. He had to agree with that. He had to agree to that. I said this in the video earlier this week. So he did Suicide Squad, then he had to start developing Superman, obviously, after he did Guardians 3. So even before he was officially running DC. And that's if he wasn't told he'd be running DC and didn't agree to run DC during the development of the Suicide Squad movie, which is something I suspect as well. This is how Hollywood is run. It's very nefarious. It doesn't matter. I think the thing is, what's worse really is to continue to lie about the situation. But of course he has to. They have to, because once you've gone with a story, you have to stick to that story. It really doesn't matter anymore. What I really want to talk about today is the James Gunn and Kevin Feige problem. Having one creative dictator in charge of everything. What's kind of revved my engines about this is that fans have been asking James Gunn to relaunch the Justice League animated series like Disney and Marvel have done with X-Men 97. So he gave this convoluted response saying, well, look, X-Men 97 is an original idea and a great show, and, we don't want to be copying what others are doing. Fine. You don't need to restore Justice League or Justice League Unlimited. That's fine. It ain't a big deal. I don't care about that anyway. But the deeper issue is here, and it's quite simple. If James Gunn and DC Studios were in place years ago, we would never have had Tim Burton's 2 Batman movies. We would never have had Nolan's The Dark Knight trilogy. We would never have got Smallville. We would never have got Arrowverse. We would have missed out on this stuff. And I've been attacked for saying this on Twitter by James Gunn bots. Cry me a river, they're telling me. DC used to be a mess and now James Gunn's here, he's going to sort it out. Excuse me, DC used to be a mess. Something else we wouldn't have got if James Gunn and DC Studios and Peter Safran were in place would be the DC Animated Universe, the DCAU, the Justice League shows, and all the great shows and movies that we got under Bruce Timm. None of that would have happened if we had one dictator in charge of DC Studios. And this is the problem, because now we've got a universe and, DC is just the imagination and vision of one man, James Gunn. No other creative will get a look in. People will say to me, but isn't that why DC Elseworlds is there? Yes, you would think. But I think that DC Elseworlds is just the dumping ground for Todd Phillips' Joker and Joker Folie à Deux, the Batman and Batman 2. I think that James Gunn really won't want a Joker 3 or the next chapter of Todd Phillips', Black Label movie universe. He won't want the Batman 3 to happen. He's not happy that these things are happening. He just wants one universe. So I don't expect anything else, anything new, to be greenlit via DC Elseworlds. It's just the dumping ground for stuff that got greenlit before he came. We already know he's put the kibosh on Keanu Reeves' Constantine sequel. That was going to happen before he came in. That will not happen anymore. I can guarantee you of that. We all, of course, know that J.J. Abrams' Black Clark Kent, Black Superman movie is still in active development. That will be part of DC Elseworlds. But that is beyond his pay structure. That is a Warner Brothers thing. Until they sort out the money that either J.J. Abrams owes them or they owe J.J. Abrams, that will be in active development. I don't see that film happening, but if it does, it's nothing to do with James Gunn. James Gunn doesn't want that to happen. James Gunn, as I say, I believe James Gunn won't want the Batman 3 after the Batman 2. He won't want another Joker movie, another Todd Phillips Black Label movie. It's going to be very, very difficult, because if the Joker sequel makes another $1 billion, then another movie will be greenlit. And there'll be nothing he can do about it, and he'll pretend he'll support it. He wasn't even sharing the Joker Folie à Deux poster or one of the trailers, and he said he was too busy, and he forgot. Interestingly enough, he never promoted Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom once, but he promoted the other DCEU films last year. So there's a pattern here. This is not about hating James Gunn. This is not about having some kind of ulterior motive. I'm speaking how I find. And because, fans are asking to revive this and to revive that, he's not, let me be clear to you, he isn't going to revive other people's DC projects. And this is another thing as well. Before he came along, it looked like that Tom Welling's and Michael Rosenbaum's Smallville animated series was a dead cert. It's not anymore. It's not going to happen. I don't believe it's going to happen. And that's a real shame. Things like that won't happen because they're not James Gunn's creations. James Gunn basically has his vision, has his ideas. They're going to happen. They're going to be greenlit. He's the creative arm of DC Studios, and he's the only creative arm. What he says, what he wants to happen, will happen. And that's it. And I think that's a little bit sad. It's a dictatorship, like it is at Marvel Studios with Kevin Feige. It's Kevin Feige's Marvel Cinematic Universe. Nobody else's. It's now James Gunn's DC Universe. So we don't have the opportunity of another Smallville or another Arrowverse, or, everything has to be connected. He's already said this. He goes, DC was a bit of a mess, think TV shows here, TV shows there, movies every, nothing was connected. But can I ask you a question? Does everything have to be connected? As I say, if he was in charge back in the day, no Burton movies, no Nolan Batman movies, no Superman Returns, and people say, well, Superman Returns wasn't very good, but I enjoyed it. I'm glad it exists. I'm glad Man of Steel exists. I'm glad BVS exists. Wonder Woman, the Snyder Cut, Aquaman, to a lesser extent, Black Adam as well. But not that I think we would have missed that film if it wasn't available. But I think I'm glad that all this stuff exists. The Batman wouldn't exist. Joker wouldn't exist if James Gunn's DC Studios was active. It would only be the stuff that James Gunn wants to do. That's what we're getting here. There is no room for anybody else's ideas but James Gunn's. You know, even the films he won't be directing, he will be there. He will be running it. It's his name on the door. He's making the decisions. And I think this is a problem. I think this is a problem because there's no room for, other ideas. We are getting the same situation as the MCU, as at Marvel Studios. It's what one man says. And it doesn't matter what anybody else says. It's all about what James Gunn wants. And James Gunn may make a big success of all of this. You know, Superman may be great, The Authority may be great, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. Maybe he'll make a success of this and it'll end up being good. But you still won't be able to get other people's ideas and other people's movies in this franchise. It's just one franchise. That's the problem. Because they believe, because the MCU used to make so much money, this is the best thing to do. So I don't agree that DC was a mess before James Gunn came along. Millions of people love Burton's Batman movies. Millions of people love Nolan's Batman movies, love Todd Phillips' Joker, Matt Reeves' The Batman. None of that happens if James Gunn's plan was implemented years ago. And you're not going to get directors like Reeves coming in anymore. It's James Gunn or die. That's it. That's all we're going to get. Do you think that's a healthy situation? Because, by the way, I don't. And I've been thinking about this, and maybe my opinion was different when James Gunn first came in. Maybe I told you I agreed with, one person singing from, everyone singing from one person's hymn sheet. But I've thought about this. And to think that we may not ever get anyone else's ideas, that we may not get other versions of these DC characters, that we wouldn't have got a Smallville, that we wouldn't have got an Arrowverse, that we wouldn't have got a Gotham if James Gunn and DC Studios was in place. Because as I've already said, he said it when he came in, DC was a mess. Nothing was connected, And I don't think that's messy, by the way. I told you when James Gunn first came in that the future of comic book movies is having a director over here with his or her vision, a director over there with something that's not connected to the thing over there, with a different vision of a DC character. Having, one DC movie every 5 years, because they're not a trend. CBMs are not a trend anymore. That's what they used to do. We had Superman the movie, we had another 3 Superman movies with Christopher Reeve. They died. Years and years later, we got Burton's Batman. A few years later, we got Nolan's trilogy. I think that's the future again. I'd much rather unconnected TV shows and unconnected movies having different people's vision rather than one cinematic universe, which I don't believe, it worked for Fake and Marvel Studios at the time, but I don't think people any longer can be bothered to have to watch every movie, every television show. There's even a problem now because they're doing these Max shows like Lanterns. We mentioned Lanterns earlier on the video. I don't have access to Max. Many people don't have access to Max. We won't be able to see Penguin. We won't be able to see, the James Gunn DC stuff that's going to be on Max. And maybe it will come to a network or a streamer near us where we live. But it's all a little bit messy anyway. But I think it's a problem if only one guy gets to decide. And it's not just about one decision. It's one vision. It's one idea. It's James Gunn's world. Nobody else's. It's James Gunn's vision. And as I say, nobody else has a chance to do anything different. And as I say, I don't believe that DC Elseworlds is anything but a dumping ground. And that, fans wanting to get more Justice League, more, Teen Titans or whatever. He ain't going to bring back those shows that have been cancelled. He's not going to bring back those animated series that used to be on. He ain't going to do that. He's going to make his own animated series. He's already doing his own animated series, which we'll see later on this year. He isn't going to revive jack shit. And people are very, very naive, tagging him, atting him. James, please revive this, please revive that. As soon as you asked him to revive the Justice League cartoon, he said no. In fact, he went deeper than that and said that X-Men 97 was such a great idea, so original. Well, is the Justice League animated series any more original? True, that series originally finished on a cliffhanger, if I remember rightly, and they continued it. I get it. I'm not demanding that we get Justice League or Justice League Unlimited. I don't even care. We had a few years of it. It was great. I'll watch the reruns. The point being is that it's his vision, it's his franchise, and nothing else. That's it. So it's going to be, and I think it's very, very unhealthy. So in a way, if his Superman succeeds, that's the future. James Gunn's vision and nobody else's. Only the directors he brings in to make his films will make films, and they will do what he tells them to do. It will be his vision. There'll be no director vision. Now, he's bringing in James Mangold to do Swamp Thing. James Mangold is an auteur, does do his own thing, even though recently working with Disney, like on the latest Indiana Jones, that wasn't on him. That wasn't his vision, but they used his good name to make a film, and fans weren't stupid enough to fall for it. So it'd be interesting what kind of Swamp Thing movie Mangold wants, because what he said publicly is he wants to do his own thing. And Gunn's already said, well, that's kind of connected to DCU, and it kind of isn't, which doesn't make any sense, by the way. So, is it, that, really, if Mangold has his own idea for Swamp Thing, that should be DC Elseworlds, but it's not. It's connected to DCU. But James Gunn's kind of said, well, it is and it isn't. Well, either it is or it isn't. Make your bloody mind up. But we're not going to see Swamp Thing and I'm still not convinced that Mangold will make Swamp Thing. He's supposed to be developing a Star Wars movie, which, in all intents and purposes, he's going to be developing first. So when are we going to see this Swamp Thing movie? If we do see it, 2030, 2035, because it isn't going to happen anytime soon. So they've announced all this stuff that we won't see anytime soon. The other issue is if Superman isn't successful, then you don't get to see Swamp Thing. And I think for sure Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow is happening. They're going to make some announcements about that and Lanterns. But it will be very, very interesting if Superman flops, what they do. If Supergirl is going to go into production very, very soon, which it sounds like it will, as will Lanterns. I think that is interesting because if Superman isn't successful, and we just don't know whether it will be or won't be, it's a big gamble. For me, I wouldn't do anything until Superman was released. And once that film is released, you can put things in place, but don't do anything. Put creatives in place for these films, for these streaming shows, for these animated shows as well. But I wouldn't make anything until Superman was released because it's not a foregone conclusion. It's going to be successful. So I think it's very, very important not to make the mistakes of the DCEU, which is announce slates, make a bunch of movies, Man of Steel comes out, they wait a couple of years, then it's BVS. BVS comes out, and while everyone's losing their shit about BVS, they're making a Justice League movie. That's why they got rid of Snyder and had to recycle it. Because they ran before they could walk. And I feel that just let Superman breathe. Let it come out. See what it does. And if it's successful, then do something. That's what they used to do in the good old days. You release your movie. If it's successful, then you come up with a sequel. But these people want to walk before they can run. And there's no guarantees here that this film is going to be successful. Maybe it will be. Maybe it won't be. We just don't know. So, but yeah, I do feel one person being in charge. It's only one person's ideas that get made. I think that is a problem. I don't think DC was a mess having different unconnected shows and movies. I actually think that way is the best way. And this one size fits all thing isn't good at all. Isn't good because you don't get to see anything else. You'll see what happens after the Batman 2 and Joker. You know, if Joker Folly Ado doesn't get another movie, right? If we don't get a third Joker movie, or we don't get another movie in, Phillips's Black Label, I'm right. Then Elseworlds, DC Elseworlds, is just a dumping ground. But the bigger one is the Batman. If we want to get the Batman 3 or something else, the Batman sequel and the Penguin, that could be it. That could be the end. He may have even already told Matt Reeves, after that, you're done. He doesn't want anything different. He don't want a DC Elseworlds. They needed a dumping ground for the Batman 2, for Joker Folly Ado, for the Penguin, so they're calling it DC Elseworlds, because they needed a place to dump things that had nothing to do with DC Universe, so people weren't confused. And I mean, he's confusing people every day anyway. So James Gunn is good at his job. He is a solid director. He is a solid writer. He has made good comic book movies. There's no point me saying anything different. I don't hate him. I don't have an agenda against him. But I am a balanced entertainment pundit, and I have to say things how I see them. And I'm not going to shield people. I'm not going to sit here like a clapping seal. I'm not going to be Boba Talks. I'm not going to say, yay, yay, love me, James Gunn, love me. He don't have to love me. He don't have to know I fucking exist. I'm a paying customer, and I will give my opinions. And my opinion is, firstly, I think he did offer Nathan Fillion the Guy Gardner gig during the premiere party of the Suicide Squad and not Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I do think one person being in charge, one size fits all, is problematic. I don't like it, and I'd rather it be different creatives coming in to do their takes on different DC characters. I wish, as I said in my last video, I wouldn't have chosen James Gunn to make a Superman movie. I concede that he may make a great Superman movie. I hope he does, but he wouldn't have been my choice. I think there's other directors, writer-directors, more qualified to make a better Superman film than James Gunn. And that's just my opinion. But the one-size-fits-all thing is a problem for me, because there's no room for any other ideas, and you need other ideas. Now, apparently he's got a writer's room. He's got a group of writers. Basically, he gives them the idea, they write it. It's all coming from his mind. There's no freedom of expression. Instead of WB being the studio, he's the studio. So, yeah, at least he knows about comics and stuff. He may make a good franchise, but is there money in this? Is there money in a DC cinematic universe? We saw last year's 4 movies flop. There's different reasons for that. I concede that. But the success of James Gunn's DC universe is not a foregone conclusion. This is an experiment that could go either way. It could go very, very right, or it could go very, very wrong. And we'll see next summer. There's no foregone conclusions here. And we'll see if it succeeds, then he'll continue to be the dictator for DC. If he fails, then it's back to the drawing board. And what do? Get someone else to run a cinematic universe, because they don't learn. Hollywood, especially New Hollywood, never learn from their fucking mistakes. So it's time to put cinematic universes to bed. I believe it's time to rest the MCU and just do individual Marvel movies from different creatives. I think that's the future of film. I think that's the future of comic book movies. But as usual, Hollywood have to learn the hard way.